everybody, and welcome back to Send News, the inside gaming podcast where we talk all about video games. I'm Brian, your host.
Oh, I'm Autumn. Hi.
I'm Zach.
Dun, 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 dun. And I'm back. Evan, the terrible Campbell at Darth Burrito. You know what it is. Let's podcast.
We all know. Yep.
We didn't work out the order beforehand, and we paid the price.
The ultimate price of awkward openings. Yeah.
Yet another awkward openings. But guys, let's talk about the news this week. Maybe the biggest story. I'm sorry we have to talk about him again, but Ninja is jumping to YouTube, or at least he jumped there for a day. He had obviously, it was on Mixer. They announced that they were shutting down. And then Ninja, I don't know if he had streamed since, but he made his kind of big return, and he went live on YouTube. This was on Wednesday. And of course, that got everybody, talking. Is he going to YouTube Gaming? They've locked down some other big profile people. But apparently, no, he is a free agent. So Ninja is on the market.
Wow, finally. Yeah. Some fresh Ninja for our bones.
Yeah, he said, I just want to make content for you guys. It's like, is it that rewarding? I mean, you make a lot of money at it. That's enough.
Well, he's achieved that wonderful thing that it takes most people to get to like their 40s and 50s to do, where he gets successful and then he realizes that success comes at what cost. And he's like, well, I've already taken care of the money thing, so I might as well go back to my roots. And just start slinging that content that the people want.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
I'm in my 40s and I have not realized that, but
it's okay. I said 40s or 50s. You've got some time.
Okay, all right. Okay, good.
Yeah, you got time.
I thought he would retire and then like make a movie or something. He's so much money. He could start his own movie studio or whatever.
He definitely has a bad movie in him. Yes.
Yeah, like at least one, maybe even two. Yeah.
He's got a Magnet Films deal lined up.
Wasting a lot of money on his wife's like yoga business that she wants to start or something like that.
Do you guys ever frequent? Well, I don't frequent it either, but there's that subreddit. The live stream fails subreddit, which is horrible. They I don't know exactly what happened, but like, man, they were going hard after Ninja's wife for like a couple days for something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I brought it up and I don't really know what was going on there, but man, it's just why.
Well, there was that like tweet thread where it was like Ninja and his wife going against some like really edgy kind of like alt-right-ish adjacent streamer who like
that's what it was.
Who's like definitely a shithead and like has a reputation for being so, but like it was admittedly pretty fucking hilarious watching Ninja and his wife just be like, well, but you don't understand, 3,000 likes, and this other guy being like, no, you 34,000 likes, and it was like, oh God.
He came out pretty vociferously in support of Black Lives Matter, and so obviously there's going to be some shitlords out there who are mad at him about that. So maybe that's where it kind of bubbled up from. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I guess the question is, does he end up at YouTube forever? Is that what we're thinking? Like exclusively YouTube? And does he sign another contract that nets him like another 30 mil?
I think he already has 23 million subs on YouTube. So he could go anywhere. He could go to a brand new thing tomorrow and still be fine. I think he might just be a free agent. Who knows? Like he might not want to sign one of these again. He's got, I would assume if he's reasonably good at saving money that he is set for life.
Right.
But yeah, maybe he wants to, I don't know. I would imagine he has like maybe other deals or possibilities like in the works with other, maybe not even video game related, but just like entertainment related. So maybe he doesn't want to be, held down.
I mean, he's like, you have to also imagine that any further deal he would get from another platform, if there were to be another iteration of something like the Mixer deal, would not be worth 30 million. I mean, I feel like that the one downside of that, him getting in and getting out real quick with his money, is that I think it made very apparent to the industry that even Ninja is not worth that price tag.
Yeah, they bought high on Ninja. Yeah. Although allegedly Facebook Gaming offered to like double it or something, and he said no.
Okay.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because like, what are the options really? Like, I feel like it's basically between YouTube and Facebook, and like Facebook could
if he
definitely
doesn't do Twitch, yeah.
And Twitch, maybe. Like, I don't know if there was bad blood there. Like, it was kind of hard to tell when he left.
Yeah.
There was, like, weird animosity there, it felt like. And then
he got mad at him because, like, some porn popped up on his page.
Yeah. Hell yeah, it did.
I know. So it's like, I don't know, because it's weird, because he still has so many subscribers on Twitch, too, where it's like he could easily just hop on back there and keep doing his thing. But yeah, I kind of agree with you, Brian. I feel like he's already made a shit ton of money. Like, it would be easier for him, and I think probably more fulfilling if, like, he could kind of just do whatever he wanted and still make, you know, a fair amount of money doing that.
It also kind of proved that Twitch doesn't really need him, do they? I mean, their views were still going up. It's not like they cratered. So, I mean, I think for Twitch, it just has that name brand recognition of just if it's synonymous for a lot of people with just streaming. So yeah, there can be stars who go their own way, but I don't think it matters to them. I'm sure they would like to have him back, but you know, I don't think they're in like some desperate position. And speaking of money, a New York Times article, the New York Times wrote about him popping up on YouTube, which is like, how insane is that? But he apparently has said in the past he makes $500,000 a month streaming, which is, none of us will ever make $500,000 in a fucking year.
Hey, speak for yourself.
I hope we do. I hope all of us do, but let's be real.
Holy shit, dude.
I mean, also, like, to be fair, Ninja's kind of got that, like, eccentric celebrity vibe to him where, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he took this time to just do some batshit crazy, like, thing that's labeled as, like, industry disrupting, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm now going to exclusively stream to the drive-in movie theater in Fortnite at Risky Reels, and like, now to watch a Ninja stream, you have to be playing Fortnite to watch him stream Fortnite. Like,
yeah.
That'd be cool.
He doesn't seem like one of the, maybe he does, but he doesn't, like, some of these guys, they get big and then they start trying to like transition to like being stand-ups or sketch comedy or something like that. He doesn't seem to be into that as much, at least the little I know of Ninja. Like, he seems like, no, I play video games. Like, I fucking play video games.
That's all that we all want out of life, I think, is just to play video games and then get paid for it. That would be pretty cool. If you don't have to do any of the other stuff.
He did that press conference commercial, though, where he was playing, like, the woman in the crowd and then him giving answers. And do you remember that?
That was the Mixer.
Hilarious
right?
answers.
Yeah, that was the Mixer thing. That's right, yeah. So he's shown his range as an actor.
Well,
listen, there's definitely a bad Ninja movie coming. We've already established.
Yeah. I think that's why he's been so successful, because, like, I think a lot of times, and this happens with YouTubers too, where, like, they start out and they get really successful doing their one thing that people like, and then they're like, oh, I can do a bunch of other stuff because people like me, they like what I'm doing. But really what they like is the thing that you're giving them. So
that one thing they did.
Yeah, exactly.
I always wonder why people, is it ego, or is it like insecurity of like, well, let me try to see if I'm actually funny doing something else, rather than just sort of, you know, having exaggerated responses to video games, which is fine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, go do your thing. If you're making money at it, just do that. It's like, you don't have to transition and try to learn the French horn or something.
Yeah, no, it's true. I know. I'm sure a lot of it is just feeling like, you know, pigeonholed into being this one thing, and being like, oh, but I have all these other interests and other talents. But at the same time, it is like, well, the audience you have, though, is there for your thing.
Is there for that. Yeah. And I get it. People want to be creative and stuff, but, you know, like, Ninja doesn't seem like that to me. He just seems like, I'm just going to play Fortnite a lot.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fine line to walk, though, because, like, to Autumn's point about feeling like, as an extremely successful YouTuber and brand voice in my own right, I know what it's like to feel pigeonholed. I mean, like, but then, like, those people that can, like, successfully cross that industry line and then break through a new mold they're there. I mean, like, I think of, you know, Joji. I think of, like, you know, how he did his Filthy Frank thing for years and then was able to make a very clear, successful transition into music. And they're out there. I mean, I think of Nakey Jakey, who's now making music. I think of like,
or like Issa Rae. She started like a web series and now she's, you know, a huge actress.
Exactly.
And if you're like successful already, why not? I mean, if you like have the money part taken care of, I guess that makes sense.
I think that's where
Felicia Day also is probably a good example where she started with the guild and then ended up in game trailers and then ended up writing books and then started Geek and Sundry and all that. Like, I think we also
she just sort of became the uber nerd celebrity
that she.
I'm talking about real fame here. Come on.
Oh God.
I'm talking about TikTok fame.
I think we project a lot of confidence onto a lot of these internet personalities too, where I could see kind of what you guys were saying before, where it's like, are they might be afraid to stray out of their comfort zone. At least a lot of like influencers and stuff I've ever worked with, they're always like, oh yeah, do you think this would be okay? Or do you think this and it's usually like a conversation. I mean, some if they're in their like wheelhouse, like it's like esports or something, like, oh yeah, I got this, like I know how to handle like a particular video or something. But like if it's like, oh, maybe we should like step out of our comfort zone and do something scripted. Like I've worked with influencers who are like, I will never do a scripted thing again because it just goes so bad for them. So yeah, I could see how someone kind of gets in their comfort zone, and especially with that Twitch mentality, if you have that for years, where remember there was that quote from Ninja years back, he's like, yeah, if I take like a sick day, I lose like 200,000 subs or something.
Yeah.
So that mentality is just like ingrained.
He's like, I'm losing him just by talking to you right now.
It's totally true. Like Bruce won't take a day off because like literally if you take one day off you lose like a ton of subs. It's crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I think that's why Twitch streamers and streamers in general like get so burnt out because it really is. Yeah, you have to do it all the time. Like it's insane.
Wait, when you, I've always been confused. Like not always, but like when you say losing subs, does that mean like he's losing out on potential new subs, or like people will literally unsub from his channel?
It might have been followers, but yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix. It's like you're losing out on a ton of potential subs. That's probably the biggest part of it. But then the other thing is like if someone's sub is lapsing that day, they won't re-up because you're not around to remind them that like you're there. You know what I mean?
I see.
So yeah,
okay,
and then also on top of that, like you're losing all the tips you would have gotten. You're losing all like the gift stuff you would have gotten. Yeah. So
tell us right now, how much does Bruce make?
I made this joke in the daily that he gets sent a gold bar in the mail every Sunday.
Hell yeah.
It costs a lot to ship that. Yeah.
Oh, he's got 138,000 followers, so that's pretty damn good.
Isn't he? He's like the 10th biggest or something, most subbed or whatever.
Yeah, he was like on, I don't know if he's still there, but he got a ton of like, his community is really, really awesome. And so they give out a ton of gift subs. So he was in the top, I think of 10 subscribed Twitch streamers for a while because of that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
and if you get featured like that, I'm sure that really helps you kind of blow up even more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's it does seem like you could get burned out really easily too, like you said, just because every day. I mean, then it just on some level, like, yes, it's fun, but it's also work.
So, too. Like Bruce works so much harder now than, and like, he ran
when you're on your own.
Yeah. But like, it's crazy because, before it was running an entire YouTube channel and you'd think that streaming would be less work, but it is so much more work. It's crazy.
Yeah. You gotta, well, that's what they say about being self-employed. Yeah, you're the only one rowing the boat. So if you stop, it's But all right, let's move on. I feel like we've talked Ninja to death. Let's talk about Modern Warfare and Warzone. Infinity Ward, the developer, banned the OK sign, which some people have taken. And it's certainly been adopted by some white supremacist elements. There's been a huge debate. It's still ongoing. Yes, it did start as a sort of troll the media effort by 4chan, and 4chan does this a lot. But I think you can definitely safely argue that it has been co-opted by some people who aren't joking, who really mean it. Yeah. And it's one of those things where, if regardless of how something like this starts, they take a life of their own. And, it doesn't even necessarily matter how the founders intended or whatever. But regardless, this is part of a larger move across the industry after all the protests, all the Black Lives Matter protests following George Floyd's death, to, it seems like clean house a little bit, which I think we would all agree is pretty long overdue.
God, yeah. Enter in the list of like all the different usernames that very clearly say the N word.
Yeah, it's interesting
Right.
to me that this is the first big move, and I mean, I guess the people being up in arms about it, I kind of get the confusion. But when like a racist sect or a group of people adopts something and starts using it, you should be mindful of it. And I think in a place where you already have an extremely kind of like toxic or rambunctious community or like online presence, it's probably makes sense to remove a tool like that for people to signal to each other that like being racist is okay.
Yeah, I think Twitch or somebody had to get rid of that emote because whenever a black character would pop up, it would just start getting filled. The chat would just be filled with the okay. So like, I don't think that's ironic. You know, I think that's
it's not a joke anymore at that point.
Being
it's
racist about it.
Yeah, it's just being racist now. Yeah.
Right. Swastikas meant something totally different before the Nazis got it, and now we all pretty much agree you can't do swastikas anymore.
Yeah. It's done.
I saw a tweet thread that was somebody was complaining about how they were really upset that this got pulled out of the game because they were just about to unlock it, and then somebody was like, well, why are you so upset about like this one little thing? Like I would understand if it's like a weapon or like a skin or something, but this is literally just a hand emote. And he was like, oh, because like I thought it'd be funny to like troll people with it. And it's like, exactly, like that's the point. Like you were excited to use it to be a bad actor, not because you were like, I just think it'd be funny to, you know, so.
Yeah.
Also, is anyone really that upset about it? Like at the end of the day,
I've seen
like
people,
it's a fucking emote.
I've seen people's. To be fair, I think it's like less outrage and more confusion of priorities, where people a lot of people still just I think have like the full context of it, and like given all of the recent reporting that like even we've done on like naming conventions and things that do get slip through the cracks, that like they're like, why is this the thing you're acting on right now when I can still make my name the N-word or something? So
I think that's a really fair point on that one.
Exactly.
But I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've had major issues. And it's also one of those things, I understand if you don't think it's racist or you're personally not using it in a racist context, but it's one of those things where you can't put yourself in everyone else's shoes. And just because you might not think it's racist doesn't mean that other people might not think it's racist.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so weird because it's like, it is so contextual, and people should understand that like a lot of people act in bad faith in these kinds of situations. So it's like, we can't give them the opportunity to like if, for example, this is something I read because I was kind of looking this stuff up earlier today, but that symbol is also like a mudra. It's something you use in meditation. It's like a really ancient whatever the fuck. So like they're not going to ban it from a yoga studio, but no one is in a yoga studio like calling each other the N-word over, chat. So it's like
you would probably be asked to leave.
Yeah. There's a lot of like, there's a pretty vocal subsection of the gaming community that just, whether or not you're trolling or joking or whatever, you can't, like, we can't give you this thing to use that has been co-opted by people who are super racist and who have shot up churches and stuff. It's like, I don't know.
When the mosque shooter did it, then that's that's a problem. Like that's and then other people. Oh well, it's just like so sometimes it popped up in some like military thing, like some graduates were using it, and they were like, oh no, they were playing the circle game, which is something that young men do like when they're 13 years old.
Oh, it was in my high school for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, but it's like
the circle game?
It's where you put a little, you make a little circle below your belt, and if somebody looks at it, you get to punch them like, oh, stop looking at my dick.
Yeah.
But like no adult has done, but it's just one of those, the mental gymnastics that people put themselves through to try to explain this away. It's like, sometimes it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you watch any of the like some of the Black Lives Matter demonstration stuff, you can see people using it to signal in there too. And it's just like once it's reached that level of people who like you would assume probably wouldn't be on the internet but are wearing the type of garb you would expect someone who believes that all people are not created equal to be flashing that sign. And once it's reached that level of kind of exposure, I don't know, even if it started as a joke, like it's done, you know.
I'm so fucking tired of the like it's a joke defense. It's like it's not. Like, and you know that it's not. And like people just say that because they are because they want to say whatever the fuck they want and they don't give a shit. You know what I mean? So it's like almost even impossible to argue that like it's clearly not a joke and you know that it's not.
Right. You know it's not. It's a Hawaiian shirt by itself is not a big deal. But if you show up at a protest with an AR-15 and a Hawaiian shirt, it means something different.
Yeah.
Like, like you said, context really matters. But it does point to a larger issue of just, I think things for a certain section of the gaming community, it's just very toxic. It's been that way for a long time. Developers have not cracked down like they should. I think personally that's a business decision and they don't want to scare away customers or lose part of their base. They can say whatever they want now, but I feel like they've let it go on forever. And Infinity Ward too. I mean, they've had tons of issues in the past, like you were saying with the usernames and stuff. Yeah, and it's one of those things like, it is like, okay, now you're going to make your stand. I do get the sort of like, why this thing, but... Or why this thing now, but I feel like
maybe it's the easiest thing to pull out. I don't know.
Yeah,
like maybe that just they could take the animation out of the game a lot easier than they could do some system-wide code that has to look for and find like racist gamer tags like that. I kind of get that, and it makes sense. And if people are mad now, like wait till they actually do figure that part out and start removing that stuff. And I think there's an argument to be made where like some people do like delve in those circles when they're younger and they kind of grow out of it and they figure it out.
Like, I think so.
But but it's still kind of sucky, you know, maybe you shouldn't be in that kind of circle in the first place, but just because you grow out of it later doesn't mean you should be able to do that kind of stuff now, you know, like
for sure
there should be something there to kind of like curve it and just right now there's been nothing. There hasn't been anything unless somebody like gets a video of you being explicitly offensive or racist on cam, and then they can track your gamer tag that way or something. And those cases have come up. Those videos used to do a lot of numbers on YouTube, people finding the most offensive people they could and posting them on YouTube, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, let's also bear in mind here, Infinity Ward's not really in recent years been good with having their priorities straight. I mean, they're just like, hey, let's put 200 players into this game, despite the fact that the community fucking hates it. Let's make Warzone be a complete mess. And then when everyone's crawling, please do something about it. Please, here's exactly what you can do about this one problem that people are having. They're like, yeah, I hear you. And like, we could just flip this switch. Or, hear me out. What if we introduce an entire new mode that is completely broken from top to bottom? What do you think about that? And they're like, it's like, just like focus like this to me. So to me, I'm like, all jokes aside, not surprised at all that this is the move that they could like decide to do. Maybe it's because like the path of least resistance, but like Brian, I totally agree with you where it's like this, I for once I kind of side with like the layman, like not woke person here where it's like, why this? This feels like a little like
I feel like a lot of it too just comes down to money. It's cheaper to just delete this from the game than it is to
hire more black people
exactly. And I think a lot of these companies that story I did on StarCraft 2, and I kept asking Blizzard, why don't you actively moderate this? Because the chat is like racist. Mm-hmm. And they kept going back to, well, we've beefed up reporting tools and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you need to hire mods or, you need to you need to actively like police this and just moderate your chat because it's like disgusting. And it's one of those things like if I as a friggin' cis white dude think something's racist, it's probably really racist. Like if I'm noticing this shit, not that I have some special racism radar or something.
Oh, you were born in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. We know how to do it because we're better at it. Okay, so
to go back to Zach's point, I remember being at the first Call of Duty XP event, and there was like a dev panel, and they had actually put like suicides in Modern Warfare 3, and the dev was like, "Yeah," and the like marketing or whatever made us take it out, and like a huge crowd of boos. But like it's literally he showed the animation of a guy like holding a gun. Well, content warning, but yeah, like it was very explicit, and it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't put this in a game. Like I understand, and it's for like in an instance if you get downed instead of just like holding the button and then you respawn, it's like to have this animation show you doing. It's like it's probably not the best thing to put in your game, and especially now in like 2020, I don't think you could even get that.
Yeah, I mean there's still like signals of that old aura of that old edgelord kind of mentality. I mean, still like when you're downed, it says hold square to take the easy way out.
Oh right, yeah.
And it's like,
so I think that's what they settled on. Yeah,
yeah. This is, I think, a lot of this comes from having a younger player base. And I think a lot of guys go through that their sort of edgelordy period where it's like, you might not have a lot of dating opportunities. You might be living at home. Life might not be working out the way you want it to. And you're just sort of young and full of testosterone and pissed off. And I think I think some of this is just going to always happen, but when it comes to gaming, but I think the thing that companies can control is how they deal with it and how, I go back to, you just need mods. Like back when I was posting on BBSs in the 90s and Usenet and stuff, those things, a lot of them just had mods for this type of purpose to get rid of racist bullshit. But now we've somehow decided, or through companies like Facebook or whatever, just take a hands-off approach that people should just be able to say anything, and this is what you get.
Definitely cheaper to do nothing. Yeah.
Speaking of which, Last of Us 2, it's no secret that the game or the plot or whatever, there was a backlash to it. And it turns out that the team was getting a lot of death threats. Both Neil Druckmann, the director,
cast.
Cast, who's the voice actor?
To do.
Laura
Bailey. Yeah.
Yeah, like going after it, which is like the craziest. That's to me is like thinking the kid who played Joffrey on Game of Thrones is really that way in real life, which did happen to him too. People would come up and yell at him on the street. So I don't know what the fuck is wrong with people.
Well, first, your first mistake here is that you refer to it as a game. You need to refer to Last of Us Part 2 as art, or this particular piece of art was divisive.
I refer to it as an abomination.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like that. No, you're right though about the whole like Jack Gleason as King Joffrey thing. Like people have a really hard time divorcing like a creative person from their character, and it's like if you stop and think for like a second, it's like Laura Bailey had nothing to do with what you were upset about. And then like I've seen some people try to make that argument, and like their defense is like, well, she shouldn't have done the role. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, if you're a voice actor by trade and you are offered a lead role in a game like The Last of Us 2, and then you get, and also bear in mind that like, even in a weird like sideways world where if Laura Bailey were to be like, oh no, like I refuse to, if this is the plot beats you're gonna have me do, it's like she had been on this game well before anyone had the scope of the plot. Like you don't hand them the entire like narrative and be like, all right, here you go. Like these talks begin like way in advance. Like there's audition processes and things like this was in place like way longer. And if you
it's a huge job. Yeah. And like she's if you're an actor like that, you go from job to job. You're not some full-time employee.
Who here wouldn't kill Master Chief for like a large sum of money?
Oh,
like,
please.
Dude, please. Yeah. I would be honored. Like it'd be an
finally
awful,
take his helmet off and see another Master Chief helmet beneath.
Yeah, it's wild. I don't think people are just turning down roles because of their gamer ideals or whatever. And in a lot of cases, like those two worlds are so completely separate between like the people who act in games and people who actually play games. I mean, to an extent, I'm sure Laura Bailey and obviously like Troy Baker and stuff, we know that they play games, but then you've got like other voice actors who probably don't as much, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's a weird situation. And like Zach said, it's like you don't even know like the entirety of the role sometimes. And even if any of that stuff mattered, like to get hate and death threats over like something like creating a game is just so outrageous. It just shouldn't happen. And it really, really sucks.
I know. I always think that's like the bottom line, because there is a lot of like criticism about this game that is worthwhile criticism.
Totally.
But then like it totally gets lost in like when people do this shit. And so it's just when people are angry, like when we reported on this, I think, was it this week or last week? It was this week.
Last week, I think.
Was it last week? God, everything, time doesn't matter anymore. But like so many of the comments were like, oh, you're just ignoring all the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, we're not ignoring anything, but this is so like egregious for this to happen. Why aren't you angry at the people who are sending death threats? Like, of course we're going to report on this shit. It's like insane.
It's also like, this gives gaming a bad name.
Yeah,
it gives
fucking
like
embarrassing.
I can totally see like, is Laura in the future going to take a video game part? Maybe not. I mean, like, or you know, somebody like Neil Druckmann of Naughty Dog, he's probably got enough money where he could be like, fuck this. I don't want to put up with this bullshit anymore. Like, you're sort of driving away people from, and whatever you think about Naughty Dog, even if you didn't like Last of Us 2, they make pretty good video games. Like, there's somebody you want like making, and yes, they have like, they crunch people. They have like many shady practices that need to be addressed. I totally agree.
Yeah.
You know, but to do like this shit, which is also illegal, and like you should be prosecuted. Like, I would love if like they just turned over these fucking kids' names to authorities and had them prosecuted. But like, it's just, it gives the whole industry a terrible reputation. And it's like, if you want to prove that gaming is more than just a bunch of kids in their parents' basement, don't act like this. Like, because it's not sustainable, and you're gonna drive people away from the industry like this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think especially it's frustrating when people are like, oh, just ignore the comments or don't read them. And it's like, dude, this kind of stuff like goes directly to your phone. It comes in a way of like, in the sheer quantity of it is almost impossible to ignore without just completely turning off your phone. And some people actually need their phone to work. I think everybody does for the most part. And like without deleting a Twitter app. And that means you wouldn't be able to engage with fans who do like your work, right? Like, it's so impossible to ignore this stuff. And you say like, oh yeah, just, you know, those people like aren't real or whatever. You don't always know that, for one. But also for two, it's like that's not the point, right? Like, this stuff will affect you. If somebody like makes fun of my hair in this video, I'll be like, oh man, and I'll try not to let it bother me, but it's still gonna get to me a little bit or something. And I know my hair.
Also,
like
I don't know if y'all have ever had this experience though, being like dogpiled on the internet. It sucks. Like, I've had it like a couple of times, but if you have something kind of controversial that you say or something that goes, I remember I tweeted about guns. And then gun Twitter just sort of went after me for like a few hours, but it's like awful. It is, and like
those commenters have guns.
Scary, yeah, and just like, so I don't blame people for not wanting to subject themselves to this.
Well, and like like for anyone that's not like fully in the loop that might be listening, like it's not just like, here's some edgy messages coming through. Like, these are like terrifying messages that are very specific. Like,
they're death threats. They're illegal.
They're death threats. They're like threats of like murdering her offspring,
family members,
or family members, being like, I mean, and like horrible wordings of like horrible slurs, and there's so much like hate filled in these messages that it's not like, I can't imagine anyone of any level of fame that may be used to this in any regard would not have a problem just like having to sift through all of this shit just to get to anything else in their timeline.
Yeah, it's like, no one should have to put up with that because of the work that they do. Like, I love that that we have more access to viewers, and that, like, you know, it is really nice to be able to talk directly to the people who watch the things that you make. But in the same breath, it's like, there is such a horrible and extremely vocal minority of people who are just fucking like poisonous, hateful. Like, I have a very small following, and so I can't imagine someone like Laura Bailey, you know, the amount of shit that she probably was getting. Like, the stuff that I get sometimes really just fucks with me hardcore. It's why, like, I don't do too much stuff on camera, but like, oh God, it makes me cringe, because it's just not something that anyone should have to ever put up with. You know what I mean? Like,
it bothers me too. I mean, I got one sort of a minor threat, and this was like, I think last year, but yeah, it still bothered me, because like in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, he's probably nothing's probably going to happen, but you never know. I mean,
I try to give people the benefit of the doubt for the most part. Like, I understand being angry and impassioned on the internet, but just like there should be boundaries there too. Like you most likely wouldn't say a lot of that stuff in real life.
No,
anybody I've ever traded comments with, even in our comments, have usually been like really nice afterwards. Where if I think like somebody kind of stepped their bounds a little bit, and we decide, who to engage with and who not to. And if someone's just way out there, I won't even touch it. And then probably the comment gets either filtered or blocked.
Right.
So we don't have to deal with that stuff as much as possible. But yeah, it's rough on your mental health. And like, even sometimes exchanging with people who you think are like upset in good faith or whatever, it's like, you can't always do that. It's a lot of energy and time, and nobody has that time, right?
And I think you're right. I mean, I've done that with people too. It's like, if you engage, and most of the time, people like back down, or like, hey man, I was just kidding, I was just trolling, or whatever.
And it's like, okay,
okay, but there's a real person on the other side of that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the last story. This one involves not death threats or white supremacy, so that's awesome. This was about Marty O'Donnell, the composer, just a legend, and it was one of the heads of Bungie, talked about the partnership with Activision, and not surprisingly, it wasn't great. But he's I think, one of the first to go on record like this and say, yeah, it was bad from the start. They tried to mess with the game, and O'Donnell kind of explained that he was against it and tried to push back, and then he got fired. This is according to him. That he got let go because of it. But yeah, it sounds like, they went with Activision because they wanted to own their IP. They didn't want it to be a Halo situation where Microsoft owns that. So they wanted to own Destiny, and they did. But yeah, it just, it sounds like one of the, he didn't get into too many specifics, but it sounds like basically Activision was trying to interfere with the creative process of the game, and which is just going to happen. You get in bed with a big publisher, like they're not just going to leave you alone.
They want to minimize their risk as much as possible.
Sure.
That's the game. That's the publisher game, right? Like, as a creative on the dev side, you want to make the best game as possible, but on the publisher, and that means taking risks, but on the publisher side, they say no risks because we know what makes money, so just do it like the last one, right? Like,
especially a big online multiplayer game like Destiny. Yeah.
And Activision notorious for running franchises into the ground, right?
Right.
Yeah, I definitely have like a very specific perspective to contribute here, because I spent over a year doing Activision social media back in 2015 when they were when they were launching Black Ops 3 and getting into a rhythm with Call of Duty that was very detrimental to the series' health, as they got towards Infinite Warfare and World War II, and these games that just, like you said, ran them into the ground. And like, you're totally right, like that they have this really notorious like reputation for doing that. But even with like a situation like that, like, what do you expect? Like, this is in not just gaming, this is in any form of media where it's like the person bankrolling this project, of course, is going to have X amount of like creative input. If you're making a film and some like, billionaire hedge fund kid is like, yeah, I'll bankroll your movie, but like, why don't you put more boobs in it? Like, they're going to have like that, they're always going to have that like money over your head. So it's, at the end of the day, like, I don't know, I've never been surprised by that, and like, I wouldn't be surprised if Bungie continues to maybe double down on some of those practices now that they're on their own, because like, say what you will about Activision's meddling, but like, they do sell games, and at some point Bungie will need to continue selling games and continue making money. So
well, they took investment from NetEase.
Yeah, exactly. So
they're not free. They're not an indie studio right now, and but you contrast that to and I'm talking about this on the Weekend Roundup, but Microsoft went on an acquisition spree. But interestingly, those studios, I mean, of course they're going to say this, but they're all like, no, it's great. Like, they don't bother us. They let us make what we want, because basically they want more stuff for Game Pass. But I find it hard to believe that Microsoft has no opinions and is not offering any, input on these various games.
Yeah, would be very unusual for sure. Yeah. But it's so true. It's like, you can't have both things. I feel like if you want the money and the security that comes with like having a big publisher or a big company backing you, it's like you also need to take their input, you know what I mean? And if you want to do it on your own, it's not going to be as stable. You're not going to make as much money. Like, it's going to be a lot harder. But at the same point, you know, you get to kind of make your own decisions. And I don't know. That's an age-old issue. I mean, like, I'm thinking of like Sugar Pine when we were on our own. Like, we got to do whatever the fuck we wanted, and it was awesome. But we were also working 14 hours a day and like not making any money. Then you know, so I don't know.
And that's why we want to give a big shout out to Patreon. Patreon, create beautiful what makes you happy.
But yeah, like, I mean, like with Ninja and like Mixer, I mean, maybe they had him on a schedule, you know, or maybe they were having him do stuff he didn't want to do. And maybe not to a major degree, but like I would imagine it was more structured and they wanted something for their money. Right. And so, yeah, it's just the trade-off. Any sort of corporate parent is going to, you know, they've got their system, they've got their, you know, rules and regulations. Hopefully, I mean, I want to give Microsoft a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because it feels like, you know, Phil Spencer and the group running things now are pretty cool about this stuff. So hopefully it's a good situation. But yeah, like with Bungie and Activision, it makes sense. I think the news part here was he was just saying what everyone already knew, I think.
Right. Yeah. It was like when you have two friends who like broke up a long time ago and you could tell they hated each other the whole time. But then one of them finally just comes out and says it. You're like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. They do the whole thing at first. Like, it's fine. Nobody did anything. You know, we still like each other. We're just, but yeah, it was mutual. And then, you know, you take one of them out for drinks and then you get the real story.
Exactly. I broke up with them.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to do the questions in just a second. But first, let's talk about my favorite VPN service. That's right, ExpressVPN. Guys, I know that most of you are probably thinking, why don't you just use incognito mode on your browser? Let me tell you something. Incognito mode doesn't hide your activity. It doesn't matter what mode you use or how many times you clear your browsing history. That porn is still going to be there somewhere. Your ISP can still see every single website you've ever visited. That's why when I'm at home, I don't go online without ExpressVPN. Like, think about the stuff you search for online. Maybe it's, you know, maybe you're into MILFs. Maybe you're into, I don't know, like just something weird. Like, how do I get this out of my ass? Like, you just don't want, it's something you just don't want everybody knowing. Like, how do you spell rhinoceros? You just want to keep this stuff to yourself. ExpressVPN, it's an app. It reroutes your internet connection through their secure servers, so your ISP can't see what sites you visit. Oh, there you go. They also keep all your information secure by encrypting 100% of your data with the most powerful encryption available. Most of the time, I don't even know I have it on. It just runs in the background. It's great. It's available on all devices, your phone, your computer, even your smart TV. They're not going to know how much Maury Povich you watch, your guilty little pleasures. They're not going to know you still like Jerry Springer. Protect your online activity today with the VPN rated #1 by CNET and Wired. Visit our exclusive link, expressvpn.com/sendnews. And you can get an extra 3 months for free on a 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/sendnews, SENDNEWS. Expressvpn.com/sendnews to learn more. Thank you to ExpressVPN. Y'all have been soldiers. Y'all have been with us for a long time. We appreciate it. Okay, let's do questions.
I'm glad to learn that Brian's into proctology porn.
Yeah, man. Some GILF porn. Yeah.
What's it today? Is it a Matchbox car up there?
I assume it's mostly what you don't want people seeing is porn and like illegal torrenting. Like that seems to be what you, I don't know. That's
or
what
like
I
if
swear.
you Google your own name over and over.
Oh, I do that all the time. Yeah. Who's talking about me? Oh, nobody again.
Oh, good.
My career's going great. Okay, first up, good question from Christian Eulenberg. Do you ever see exclusive games becoming a thing of the past? I get why people love them, but taking a step back, it seems like a ludicrous idea in today's world. I don't own multiple Blu-ray players for specific movies, so why do we need multiple consoles to play certain games? I like that analogy, actually. I I I would love to see exclusives go away, but they certainly aren't this generation because everybody's, Sony has made it very clear that, they're locking down Insomniac games for Spider-Man. Microsoft's gone on a binge of, Microsoft seems a little bit more loose about it, but they're definitely locking down a bunch of studios too. So it sucks though, because you should only need one thing to play games on.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like the console wars are just going to be replaced by the launcher wars. It'll just be a matter of like exclusivity will still be there. It will just look different.
And exclusivity with streaming services and different marketplaces, like it's just changing the way that things are exclusive. But why no one would ever give that up. It's like such a good way to make money, and like if
Nintendo lives and dies with its exclusives. I mean,
exactly.
it's
Well,
they're not going anywhere.
To take the Blu-ray analogy and like compound it, I mean that is a good analogy for Blu-ray players and that specific physical media. But like, I would argue a more salient way to look at that is like exclusivity between Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max.
True.
Like there's streaming services are all right now having giant wars, bidding wars over who gets rights to what IP. So I short answer, no, I don't think we will see exclusivity go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
I hope at least it becomes more just I don't know. I hopefully with streaming and things like that the hardware barriers will go down. But it sucks to say, but I think, you're still going to have to, Sony's going to have its slate of games. Nintendo's going to have its slate of games, Xbox. And also Xbox, of course, they're going to be a little bit more lax about exclusivity this generation because they didn't have any good exclusives. Like, let's be real. The company that's losing always becomes magically more gamer friendly.
Everything that, even if Sony and Microsoft, everything goes to the cloud, right? There's still, like Autumn said, you still need something to bring people over to those platforms. And like Zach said, so you're always going to have an exclusive in that way. I think hardware, like dedicated hardware, is more likely to go away, but I also feel the same way. Like, I don't know, like if the thing that makes exclusives great is being able to push the particular hardware, whether it's Xbox or PlayStation, to its limits, right? It's about working with those limits to their very best potential, and that's where you get like the very best games a lot of times. I mean, that's subjective. You get the very best looking games and performing games, I think, in a lot of ways. That's a little bit more like salient to argue. But I think I would miss them. Like if they did go away, like you don't have that type of competition to make the best box, to make the best game on, right?
Yeah, that's true. Because then it's just a hardware.
Battle. And like it feels like things are becoming so the same. It's like, what is the difference really? I mean, one's going to be a little faster than the other, maybe. Like we don't even really know. So
but they're And I do the thing to devil's advocate it, it is cool having three distinct competitors, and especially like Nintendo that's just completely doing its own thing out there. And you're right. You would lose that.
Yeah, it's true. It's their own brand thing too. Like Sony's thing is their exclusives. It just isn't like Nintendo's thing is them doing whatever the fuck they want and like staying far away from everyone else.
Yes.
And like Xbox's thing now, I mean, they're doing amazing things in the streaming space, and they're they're very like open and they're, I think, probably the most accessible, it seems to me, like game.
They're like, we're going to be gamer focused, it feels like.
Exactly, which is awesome. And I feel like they all kind of fill their own little space, and that's probably good for them too, because it probably just helps them like say, here we are, here's our brand, boom. Like if you take away the exclusivity stuff from Sony, like obviously they still have a lot of groundbreaking technology and stuff like that, but I don't know.
I think that but if you take that away, I do think they need exclusives, I think, more than Xbox does. Just because I don't know. And two, they built up a night, like when I think of Sony now, I think of like Uncharted and Spider-Man and Little Big Planet and stuff like that. And it is kind of cool to have like everybody's got their own little rosters almost of characters.
I think of Sony Music, the HDMR headphones, the Sony Xperia.
Yeah, I think of my keyboard, my piano.
Yeah, my skipless mobile CD player.
All right, moving on. Sor Uno asks, I just finished The Last of Us. Can you tell? I assume this is Last of Us 2. Can you tell me why people hate this game? Because it's awesome. Well, we're glad you liked it. Some of us finished it. Zach, you finished it, right?
Yeah, I did.
And you liked
Zach
it.
and I did a spoiler cast, and
Okay.
I definitely fall onto the more positive side of the sentiment camp than it seems some of the internet.
I wasn't a fan of the story or the writing, but like we talked about in the spoiler cast, there's moments in that game that are like some of the best performances and like technical achievements in gaming, and they should be seen. Like for me, the writing didn't quite cut it. I thought it was probably like a game that's 10 or 15 hours too long, but I did have fun like playing different parts of it, you know. So as to why people hate it, I don't know. We can't really. You say we've got like 2 pretty long videos about the reception of The Last of Us 2. You can probably watch those and kind of
without spoiling anything, you can kind of summarize the hate for this game in that the story just took a really divisive angle. Yeah. And it's an angle that is very, very easy to like just paint as black or white when it is meant to be gray.
Yeah. It's a big swing by the studio, I think, doing what they did. And you either like appreciate that swing and try and go with it and see the story that they're trying to tell, or you just like reject it wholeheartedly without giving it a chance. And I've even seen people who have given it a chance and they said they didn't like it, and that's totally valid. Yeah, that's like totally fine.
It reminds me a little bit of The Last Jedi, which was also very divisive because it took a different track and made different choices than Star Wars movies usually make. I loved it. I thought Luke's arc was amazing. It's one of my favorites. I also get why people don't like it, you know, and a lot of people completely hated it. And I haven't played Last of Us 2 yet, but that seems to be part of it here.
Yeah.
I appreciate The Last Jedi's bold choice to open on a phone prank scene.
Yes.
Awesome. Oh man, I have so many thoughts about The Last Jedi and like how, I don't know, I think that was like for me in the trilogy, and we don't have to get into this, but it was just kind of like, okay, this isn't particularly my favorite flavor of Star Wars anymore, and that's cool. Like let the new kids have fun with these characters and stuff, and that's rad. Yeah. As for The Last of Us, the most poignant like kind of takes I saw were that like people felt that the characters weren't representative like to themselves and made choices that they maybe wouldn't have made, and I think that's like kind of a fair criticism. And certainly in the later elements of it, even learning about some of the newer characters and the choices they make, some of them are just kind of bad. They're just like outright bad, and then sometimes that's what they try to do with writing. They're supposed to make you feel something when a character does something that you necessarily wouldn't have done, right? So it's about like evoking emotions from the audience. But yeah, I think like some of that stuff lands and some of it definitely doesn't, at least for me. And I think that's where, if you're acting in good faith, and I think being a critic in good faith, I think those are like really, really fair criticisms. But if you're someone who saw the leaks and were like, this game is garbage, I think that's like a real bad acting. That's like just, you know, what
Muscle
do you do with that?
Lady doesn't exist in real life.
It also does feel, and again, this is just sort of from, I don't want to spoil, but from like what I know of the game, broadly speaking, Ellie becomes this sort of bloodthirsty killer in a way, you know, or maybe not bloodthirsty, maybe that's not the right word to use, but this just sort of vengeance seeking fucking angel of death. And that is not the vibe I got off her in the first game. So it does seem like quite a departure for her, which is fine. But yeah, I think that is going to, if I'm being charitable, I can see how some people might not like that.
Yeah, I get it. It's hard. Like, I mean, we can think about the ending of Game of Thrones that was also like hugely hated because characters made choices that people were like, they would never do this, and like, why is this happening?
Right.
And I like, it is hard when you're invested emotionally in a story and something that like, you know, you've spent a lot of time in, and like, I don't know, but it is weird because, you know, I didn't like the ending of Game of Thrones, but I, you know, talked to my friends about it, and then maybe it kind of just stopped there. I didn't like send death threats to people.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I didn't like it either. And I loved Game of Thrones, but yeah, the ending felt super rushed and like they were just trying to wrap it up. And I wasn't a huge fan either. But yeah, I also think some people, just sort of, oh, that sucked, I'm going to move on. But I think there's also kind of this culture of fandom too, where it's just like, no, a huge part of my identity is liking these specific things. And if somebody intrudes on that or messes with that, then people, but was The Last of Us that big? I mean, it was one game. Like, I can see like Game of Thrones, which was massive, and Star Wars, which is, a huge amount of movie over decades. But The Last of Us, it was one game before that. Like, there's no Last of Us universe, or, I know there is some, out there on the internet, but it's, I don't know. I've never heard someone describe themselves as a Last of Us fan.
I totally have. I think. Oh, go ahead, Zach. Yeah.
No, I agree. I tend to agree with you because I while I disagree, and I loved the first game, and I was thirsty for more of just that universe, and I'm glad that in that respect that the second game was full of awesome world building, and just giving us more of what that environment looks like. I also tend to agree with you where it's like, was any of the characters from the first game really so like endemic to one personality trait that like it's almost like people are like not giving any room for these characters to grow or have an arc. And it's like, to stick with the Star Wars analogy, like, do you really want a Luke Skywalker that stays the like doe-eyed farm boy for the entire series, or do you want somebody who like goes through traumatic, dark shit and is a different person on the other side of it? How stories work. Like, so I don't know. Just to me, it just seems like a very restrictive criticism, and one from a lot of people that have, like you said, not even played the game and just have the spoilers from the leak with no context.
I really liked the first game a lot, but at the end of it, like, it's a zombie game with
it's a very good, cliche,
a good story.
It's a great story
for a video game
that was inspired by Planet Earth. Come on,
like, but yeah, it just I at least got some of the Star Wars, because it's like there are people who completely devote their lives to that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
I pledge allegiance to the 501st.
Let's see if there's anything else. We're coming up on time. Okay, this is from Tom Breck. This is worded a little weird, but I think I get
Tom
what
Breck
they're saying.
Oh my gosh, no, I can't remember his name. This isn't personal, but it's just this is what happens in my brain when I try to think of something. Fuck, the guy who voiced Joel in The Last of Us. We did a podcast with him. Troy Baker. This is Troy Baker's...
I called him Joel when we started.
You did. This is Troy Baker's like production guy. I don't know. We talked to him to set up his set up the Troy Baker podcast. Yeah.
Is there correlation? Is there correlation between the discussions of games are too long and that the cost of games are rising? I think he's asking, are those related? And people have said, who was the guy recently? Sean Layton, formerly of Sony, was saying that he'd like a return to shorter games because they're getting so long and so expensive. And he's said this, and others have too, that
friend of the show.
It's just unsustainable. Friend of the show, Jason Schreier. Yeah. He said something like that The Last of Us 2 costs so much to make that it's just that it like costs double the last of the first game, that you can't double it again after that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it really is just like the rising prices of everything is just adding to like, well, at some point you're going to have to tack another like $10 onto the cost of games if you keep doing it the same way. You can't, always stay at a $60 price range. So I think if they did start doing shorter stuff or games as a service stuff more, which kind of seems like a lot of people are pivoting anyway, that's probably the only way we're going to keep that price down.
There's probably something also to say about B-tier games just completely disappearing. Like, There used to be a lot more of those that were kind of almost close to AAA, but in that probably same time.
AA games.
Oh, that's
AA
like
games.
that's like the exactly like that's where I think we're in. This is why I don't understand the like sky is falling shit about this whole topic where it's like I think we're in a healthier place right now than we have ever been as far as pricing, because I remember like days of playing a AA THQ Midway game that was like, man, this is not worth the $60, $50 price of admission. But now, we get pissed off if there's like a Ratchet and Clank remake on the store and it's like, oh, $40. This is way too much for this. I'm like, no, that makes sense. Like it's a $20 cheaper game than like a normal AAA release, because people are seeing the value of like, okay, this is a remake, not like a whole new thing, and the studio is still like, yeah, we can price it at 40 and still have it be a profitable product.
Yeah, his point, and I found this interview, but he's referring to, there's a common stated theory that the cost of development has doubled with every new generation of consoles. And he said that currently, cost of development, if you're talking about big AAA games, between 80 million and 150 million. His point is, we can't double those again. The specific quote, I don't think that in the next generation you can take those numbers and multiply them by 2 and think you can grow. I think the industry as a whole needs to sit back and go, all right, what are we building? What's the audience expectation? And he is arguing, like, instead of 50, 60-hour games, to take it back to the 12, 15-hour games, which I love. I love a nice, tight 12-hour game.
Yeah.
Best game ever, Inside. Perfect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, was it? I mean, maybe this is ignorant to say, and I'm saying this like with a big question mark. So, but like, wouldn't just the way that like the capitalism landscape of everything is, like, wouldn't that self-correct? Like, wouldn't that correct its like if next console generation it takes, double that development cost, and so they go, okay, well, we gotta slap another $10 to the end of that price tag. Like,
well, it can correct by lots of studios going out of business, which has happened before. I mean, in the early '80s, the whole industry crashed.
Right, and that's again, that's why I say this with like I'm not saying this is a definitive answer, but it's like I guess I still am failing to understand the whole. The big deal about it, because I remember when we swapped over to the Xbox 360 PS3 console generation, like, games went up from $50 to $60, and like everyone freaked the fuck out for like all of a year, and then that was just the new norm. But then like also I'm like, well, like inflation is a thing, and like money, like $60 is not or arguably closer to what $50 is worth anyways these days. So it's like I don't know, like it seems like something that, like, if it really is that much of a problem, to the point where like the industry is getting into dire straits over it.
Well, they just spend less money. Yeah. Like, and you may be right. And there are a lot of tools out there like Unreal Engine, the newer one, the 5th one that's coming out, and it's going to be free before your first $1 million. So I don't know. The other side of that too is crunch and working people so hard that they just leave the industry. And reportedly, Naughty Dog had that happen, and a person who was a former staffer there said Last of Us 2 should have been finished like a year ago, but they burned through so many people, they had to bring in junior people who had to get caught up to speed. So it's it's also from a talent side as well, which that makes some sense.
Yeah, man. I know, that's crazy. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like everything is like, we're all coming to a point in every sector of the economy where something terrible is going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know when like a bunch of shit is going to crash and crumble. I thought it was going to happen during the pandemic, but the stock market is doing like incredibly well right now. Which is bad.
Which is great if you own stock, but bad for everyone else.
It's like bad in that now, because like what should have happened and what would have been actually okay is if things had kind of like cooled off a little bit, like it was kind of shitty and it just stayed a little cooled off for like a couple years. That would have been the best case scenario. But now shit is going like it's like so bad. Some shit is gonna go down and
and like I don't see how we can like absorb all these businesses that are shutting down. Like there was a thing like they were saying later this year in Austin, like 90% of bars are gonna be shut down. And it's bars or musical venues or maybe both. But yeah, it's like, what are people gonna do for work? Like it's scary.
Yeah. I think getting back to the original question though, like are games getting too long? I think the question is just framed a little bit in bad faith. I think particularly Sean Layden is talking about like AAA, like blockbuster games, right? Are those games getting too long?
I think he's talking about, that AAA open world.
I don't think anybody's coming at Persona 5. Like, I don't think anybody's coming at like games that are procedural like Minecraft or anything. Nobody's saying like, hey, we need to get rid of all these long games that are great value. Right. Like, that's not, I don't think that's what the conversation is trying to be framed around. And like, I think if the question is really just like, should AAA games be shorter? I think it's not a bad idea because you can get a lot of benefits from it, especially if, and this is a big if because publishers are notoriously kind of lousy, but if publishers are willing to give developers the same amount of time to make a shorter game, think about the type of energy and the quality and stuff that goes into that shorter game, right? Like if you have a shorter Last of Us 2, you know, you're making more cuts, you're making more edits, you're improving the pacing, you're making sure that those areas that you're making sure the performance of a game is up to snuff, right? Like hopefully
it releases quicker. It takes shorter to make. Yeah.
And then also there's a good conversation around like how many people are actually finishing games. So developers are putting all this time in, and I think like we've seen reports that that's like less than 20% of people who buy these story games like actually finish them.
Oh wow!
I'm not sure how real those numbers are, but if that's the truth, then maybe shorter games make sure that people get the most out of the $60 or the $70 at this point that they already spent, right?
Yeah. Well, let's leave it at that. We're up on time. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, after Mixer announced that it would shut down later this month, everyone's been wondering what would happen to everyone's favorite flossing Fortnite player.
I'm not seeing enough movement.
Yeah, we're all wondering, hey guys, is Ninja gonna have enough money to make rent this month? The poor little blue-haired boy.
Oh my goodness.
Does he still have blue hair right now?
Who cares?
Good point. We might have gotten a clue yesterday when Ninja posted a mysterious tweet